Okay, so you've got your powdered milk paint product and now you're super excited to paint. But how do you mix it? Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you how to mix any powdered milk paint product. Plus, at the end of this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you 3 pro tips for you to keep in mind before and during mixing your milk paint. Coming up. Here with Queen Bee Trending Home Fashions, and I absolutely love to paint furniture, especially with old-fashioned milk paint. So here on my channel, I'm going to be bringing you weekly tutorials on how to paint pretty much anything you can imagine with milk paint, plus other tips and tricks on how you can transform your furniture and other found items. So if those things sound fun to you, you should totally subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. All right, let's get to mixing. As I mentioned before, my favorite milk paint is old-fashioned milk paint. Now, because this is true milk paint, it's going to come in a powder form that you mix yourself. But don't worry, it's super simple. All you need is equal parts warm water to paint powder. That's it. So I've already pre-measured the amounts that I'm going to be using today into these 2 containers. In this jar, I have 3 tablespoons of warm water. Very important that you use warm water. Actually, the warmer the better. Your paint will not mix up quickly if you don't use warm water. And then 3 tablespoons of the bayberry green. Now all you're going to do is simply add your powder to your water and then stir until mixed. It's really that simple. There's a couple of different tools you can use to mix your paint powder into your water. It really just boils down to preference. You can use a fork, you can use a baby little dessert whisk like this, or if you're mixing more than 3 tablespoons of paint, you can get a little bit bigger of a whisk. I wouldn't go like a full-size normal kitchen whisk. All this is just one of those little attachments for a hand mixer. They have them all the time at the thrift store for like 50 cents. You could also just simply put the powder in there and shake it up in the jar. However you want to do it. I really don't like doing it that way because it kind of incorporates a lot of air into your paint. So I'm only mixing up 3 tablespoons. I'm going to be using this little dessert whisk. I'll throw a link below. You can buy them on Amazon for fairly inexpensive, or thrift stores have them. Actually, I think World Market carries them for $1. Now that you guys are a lot closer to what I'm doing, let me show you what I do. So I don't like to add all of the paint at once because it's going to cause your paint to be clumpy and harder to mix that way. So, just a little at a time. Okay, I changed containers real fast because I wanted the camera to be able to see down into the container better. But as you can see, all of our paint powder is mixed into our water. And there are no clumps. There's some bubbles somewhere, some air got incorporated into it. But you can see we've got our melted milkshake consistency. And that's what we're going for. Okay, now that our paint is all mixed up and we got the consistency that we want, we're going to set it and forget it for about 15 minutes. You want to do this because you want to give those natural pigments time to settle into the water and get all incorporated, and so your paint thickens up just a little bit more so it's not going to jerk when you paint. Alright, it's been about 15 minutes. You're going to grab your paint, give it a quick little stir, check your consistency. At this point, if you're happy with the consistency that your paint is, you are ready to paint. But if you think it's too thin, add just a little bit more paint powder, and if it's too thick, just add a tiny bit more water. But like seriously, a little bit at a time because you don't want to get too crazy. Also, it's a pretty good idea to keep some type of a stirring apparatus, a spoon, your whisk, whatever, in your paint, and just give it a little stir every so often while you're painting. That way, all your pigment is sure to stay incorporated and doesn't fall down to the bottom. Okay, we're all done mixing. Are you guys ready for some pro tips? Pro tip number 1. Just like in cooking and baking, we know that solid things should be measured with certain tools, and fluids should be measured with certain tools. The same principle applies here in mixing your milk paint. These tools are for measuring solids or powders. These types of tools are meant for measuring liquids. I know that seems super simple, but it really makes a huge difference, and it's gonna give you a much better paint consistency if you measure out the water and the powder using the appropriate tools. Pro tip number 2, only mix the amount of milk paint that you are going to need for a specific project for that specific project time. Milk paint does not keep. You cannot mix an entire bag and expect to use it 2-3 days later. No, in a powder form, it lasts forever. Once you mix it with water, you got 2-3 hours, maybe overnight in the fridge if you're lucky. I typically tell people if they're doing about a medium to a larger project, maybe like, let's just say a dresser or a small, like an end table or some type of a piece of furniture, just start with a quarter cup of powder to a quarter cup of warm water. If you're doing a smaller piece like maybe a picture frame or a small decor item, typically 2 tablespoons powder to 2 tablespoons water should get you by for your first coat, and then you are free to mix more as you go. You can always mix more if you need it, but if you mix too much, then unfortunately it's wasted. Pro tip number 3, immersion blender. If you don't know what an immersion blender is, it's just like a handheld blender that people typically use to stir soups or sauces or something like that. They stick it down in the pan and it mixes and stirs without incorporating air, making immersion blender the perfect tool for milk paint. Now, I don't recommend using, the kitchen everyday use immersion blender to mix your milk paint with, because as you can see, milk paint likes to stick to it. The way you use an immersion blender to mix milk paint is super simple. It starts off the very same way as if you weren't using an immersion blender. You measure out your water, you measure out your paint powder. Add a little bit at a time, but you just don't really need to whisk that much. You just add, incorporate, a couple swishes. Once all your powder is in your water, you insert your immersion blender, 30-45 seconds, that's all you need, and you will have perfectly smooth paint. But don't mix any longer than like 45 seconds to a minute, because then you chance burning up your motor in your immersion blender. They're not made to run that long. If painting with milk paint is something you're planning on doing quite a bit of, I would definitely recommend investing in an immersion blender. The investment is not very large. I bought this particular one on Amazon for $13 and had Prime shipping. I'll drop a link below for it, but honestly, you can pick one up at a thrift store for like $1 or $2. As long as they work just as well to blend your milk paint as a brand new one. So that is it for me on this video. I really hope that I could help you learn how to mix your milk paints, and even if you already knew how to mix it, maybe gave you some extra tips. If you would like to try milk paint or need to stock up on some, I've got all 20 colors of old-fashioned milk paint, plus all the other products for sale on my website, queenbeethf.com. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, that would mean the world to me if you did. And I will see you guys next week for another tutorial on how to use milk paint. But until then, I'm going to throw you out to my girl Jamie Ray Vintage right up here in this video, because she's awesome and you can learn so many things from her, and let YouTube take it away right here. Bye!